Welcome to another day of our Whimsical Flowers Stitch Along. Today we're going to be filling in the rest of our stems. We're going to be learning stem stitch for all of our stems without leaves. We're going to work on fly stitch here, and I'm going to show you how to make these backstitch short stems. We're going to start with the backstitch short stems, and we will go on from there. Now let me make sure, this one is where I'm going to start here. This one that is 581 because I have some of that left on my needle, and that is a good place to start. So I'm going to quick tie a knot at the end of my thread, and then I'm going to make sure the focus isn't changing on you. My phone likes to default to that and makes me sick watching it, and I don't want to make you sick watching it. All right. So to make these short stems, we're going to start at the top and work our way down. And you can see this is kind of a compilation of some bigger stitches, but still short lines. And that's how we're going to approach these stems. So we're going to take a nice big stitch down here to almost this intersection. Then our next stitch, we're going to come up over here on this next pokey part, and I'm going to pull it all the way down past the end to this other until it matches. And you can see right here that I'm starting to get a little bit of overlap already. And then come over here to this other stem, and then we're going to follow this line all the way down to its next intersection over here. I think my line's a little off, so I'm going to come down. Come on, needle. There we go. There. And again, you can see my stitches are hooking, overlapping. Then we'll jump over here to this next little stem. Again, following our same pattern of big stitches here down to the next intersection. And then this last one I'm going to make is 2 stitches. I'm going to make a stitch that overlaps to here. And then I'm going to make another little stitch to the bottom of the line. Or 2 stitches, depending on how long you want that one to be. And the reason I stitch it like this is I feel like it gives a more organic feel, that this stem looks different than its neighbors and the little branches grow out of each other. So I'm going to anchor this off, and then I'm going to jump over here and we'll do fly stitch, and then we'll learn stem stitch. All right, I've switched to 937, and we are going to work the fly stitch right here. And that stitch is also worked from top to bottom. So we're going to come up at the very top of our stem and go right down to the first intersection. Make this little straight part. Now I'm going to come up on the left side or the right side, but this first tip of the stem. Then you come over to the other side. And then I'm going to pull down, but I'm going to leave a loop on the top. Now I'm going to come up right at the end of this first stitch right here. Then I'm going to pull up through my loop, pull until those are nice and snug. Oh, I caught some on my tail. There we go. Pull that out. And then I'm again going to go down at the next intersection to anchor this part of the fly stitch. And I'm going to do this again. I'm going to come up on the left, go down on the right, pull down, leave a loop on top, come up at the end of the previous stitch here in the center, pull my thread tight, and then come down at the next intersection. And I will just continue all the way to the bottom. And there we have it. I've made it to the end. And I decided to do 2 back stitches here at this last little bit instead of 1 big stitch to keep it more consistent with the rest of the stitch sizes here. I'm again going to anchor off and then we will learn stem stitch. All right, at this point, the rest of our stems are going to be stem stitch because none of them have leaves and none of them are our little back stitch ones. Now, stem stitch can be worked from top to bottom or bottom to top. I like to work top to bottom, and I'm going to be stitching this stem right here because I happen to have 904 on my needle. So I'm going to come up at the very tip of my line, pull my thread up, and then I'm going to catch it, hold it to the side. Then I'm going to take some pretty big stitches for my stem stitch today, just personal preference. I like how they look on these stems. I'm going to go down, leaving this loop here on the top. It twists because the thread is twisty, not because it needs to. Then I'm going to come up in the middle of those 2 needle points and pull up till my thread lays flat. Then I'm going to pull my thread the same direction. And now I'm going to come this stitch length down from my thread. So it's going to look like half a stitch length from the end of here and a full stitch length from my thread. I'm actually going to make it even bigger. Just a nice big stitch. And then I'm going to, again, holding the loop on the top, I'm going to come up at or very close to the end of this previous stitch. And then I pull up and we repeat. Again, pulling my thread to the same side, I come down my stitch length away, leave the loop on top, and come up at the end of the previous stitch. And what's going to happen with as you make this is it's going to kind of have a rope-like appearance. It's going to have more of a solid line look as opposed to the back stitch where you can see the individual stitches more. So it makes a really great stem, and it makes a pretty nice contrast to the back stitch so that we have some visual variety in our stems. Now, just like day 1 of stitching the stems, you might not make it through all of the stems today in the time you want to spend, and that is 100% okay. Practice stem stitch, get a few done, and then show up tomorrow and we'll start our flowers. And then you can always keep finishing more stems as you have time. I have made it to the end of my line, and I'm going to take normal stitch length, but I'm going to end just a teeny bit above the end of my line here. All right, so I'm going to go down, make my last stitch like I normally would, but then I'm going to finish by going down just below the end of this last stitch so that all of my twists for this stem look like they're the same size. So I'll just repeat this process for the right colors on the right stems until I have all of them filled in, and then we will be ready to move on to flowers.